The next day, Iwaizumi and 𝒖𝒔𝒄 practiced together again. Of course, the mood between the two was somewhat tense. Both Iwaizumi and 𝒖𝒂𝒄 could not forget what happened the other day, which made the whole situation between them slightly uncomfortable. However, they both pulled themselves together and tried to focus on 𝒖𝒂𝒄's recovery. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 braced his hands on his thighs and breathed heavily. Sweat was running from his forehead and he frowned a little. My jumping serves still don't feel so good. There's a lot of power behind them. Is something bothering you in the process? Your ankle? Iwaizumi collected the volleyballs and threw them back into the ball cart. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 straightened up and stretched his back. At first everything is fine, but once I play for a while and get really warm, my ankle feels slightly strange. That's normal. Once you get back into the swing of things, it'll go away. Let it be for today and sit on the bench. I'll massage it out a bit. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 nodded and walked over to the bench. He grabbed a towel to wipe off the sweat and took his water bottle to drink. Then he put the towel around his neck and sat down on the bench. He stretched his foot upon the bench and leaned back, supporting himself with his hands behind his back. Iwaizumi also sat down, lifting one leg over to the other side so that 𝒖𝒂𝒄's foot was now between his legs. First he felt his ankle to check if he felt anything strange, then he started massaging it. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 couldn't take his eyes off Iwaizumi. His heart began to race, and he felt the butterflies in his stomach go into turmoil. Does that hurt? Iwaizumi raised his head to be able to look at 𝒖𝒂𝒄. As their eyes met, they both blushed immediately. Iwaizumi returned his gaze to his hands, which were doing their job, and 𝒖𝒂𝒄 put his head in the back of his neck and stared at the ceiling. His face was totally red and he was terribly hot. No, I'm fine. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 turned his head aside so that he was now looking back over his shoulder. His expression was totally annoyed. Why do I have the urgent need to kiss him right now? Once you start your practice in Argentina again, you'll be back to your old shape in no time. Yeah. Their eyes were still averted from each other. I saw San Juan's post from yesterday. They must be really looking forward to having you back. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 now looked at Iwaizumi surprised. I think we're all happy that I can still play the rest of the season. It's really close between us and Buenos Aires this time. Iwaizumi hummed. His thoughts were still in the comments below the post. He couldn't stop thinking about it and he hated it. His brows furrowed slightly. Thank you Iwa. Iwaizumi raised his gaze and looked at 𝒖𝒂𝒄 in wonder. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 gave him a warm smile. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have recovered so quickly. Now I can even play the last matches in the league. Iwaizumi smiled back. I told you that I'm good at my job. Don't be so conceited. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 threw his towel at Iwaizumi. They both laughed. Deal with the truth. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 scoffed. At that moment, 𝒂𝒄 and Atsumu entered the gym and walked toward the two friends. Guys. You're here. Good, then we can start. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 was slightly confused. We'll play against each other so that you can get back into your usual routine as a setter. Of course we have to be careful. Atsumu, 𝒂𝒄, please don't overdo it. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 still has to be pretty careful, and I'm nowhere near being able to keep up with you guys. It's important to me that we get a game done where 𝒖𝒂𝒄 is challenged but not overworked. 𝒂𝒄 nodded. He had immediately understood Iwaizumi's point. Atsumu grinned. Well then, you better watch the world's best setter now. Yes Atsumu, you can still learn a lot from me. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 and Atsumu walked onto the court and goaded each other. Was it really such a good idea to ask Atsumu to take over? I had forgotten what rivals they were. Don't worry, I'll take it from here and keep a low profile. Thank you, Kyo. I owe you one. 𝒂𝒄 and Iwaizumi smiled at each other and followed the two squabblers onto the court. 𝒖𝒂𝒄's mood had totally lifted. Playing against Atsumu and 𝒂𝒄 made him really happy. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 you won't do any serves in this match. Achu neither do you. Wait what? Why not? For reasons. Iwaizumi grinned at 𝒂𝒄. What the hell guys, that's not fair. Yeah kidding. You've already made enough serves today. Besides, this is about you getting into the flow as a setter, not about who wins the game. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 and Atsumu looked at Iwaizumi in annoyance and frowned. Obviously both of them wanted to decide who's the better setter by winning the match. Settle this in the World Cup semi-finals. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 and Atsumu winced and smirked mischievously at each other. We will. Oh you bet we will. 𝒂𝒄 rolled his eyes and Iwaizumi grinned. What a fighting spirit. They played for a while and had a lot of fun. Iwaizumi laid down a serve that 𝒂𝒄 easily received. After a perfect toss from Atsumu, 𝒂𝒄 got caught up in the moment and couldn't hold back from striking with full force. 𝒖𝒂𝒄's eyes widened. Block. Iwaizumi ran towards the net and the two jumped up to block while the ace scored. The ball bounced off Iwaizumi's right and Oikoa's left hand, but since there were only the two of them, they had no chance to keep it up. 𝒂𝒂𝒄 frowned as his hit actually touched the block and Atsumu clicked his tongue. Fuck. Really 𝒂𝒂𝒄? Ugh, sorry, Achu pulled me along. Atsumu turned to �𝒂𝒄, his eyes sparkling. I did, Omi. �𝒂𝒄 ruffled Atsumu's hair and pushed his head down. He grinned. Just a little. Oikoa giggled and Iwaizumi picked up the ball. This time it was �𝒂𝒄's turn to serve, and as discussed, he held back. Iwaizumi received it easily and passed the ball to Oikoa. Perfect. Iwaizumi was still a good spiker and Oikoa's sets made it incredibly easy for him to get a good hit. Iwaizumi smirked and wanted his revenge. He attacked with full force as well, but Atsumu and �𝒂𝒄 had no chance to switch to the block. �𝒂𝒄 tried to take the ball, but it bounced off the side. Oikoa and Iwaizumi each clenched a fist in joy. Yes. Nice kill. TSK, I didn't know you had so much left in you, Iwa. What the hell just happened? Well, that's what happens when you underestimate us. Iwa-chan wasn't our ace for nothing in the past. Iwaizumi grinned and gave Oikoa a slap on the back. Your toss made it more than easy for me too, Carver. Awesome. Oikoa smiled and realized that he was blushing slightly. Achu. That's how you have to do it. Really, Omi? Everyone except Atsumu started laughing. The four of them played for a while until they were all pretty exhausted. Okay, enough for today. That was fun. Hope we can do it again someday. It was a nice change from the normal practice. Definitely. After showering, Iwaizumi quickly headed to his office to retrieve the locked valuables. As he was unlocking the door, he noticed Oikoa's phone ringing. It was Sierra. Iwaizumi frowned, but thought he would call again if it was important. As soon as he locked the door to the locker, Oikoa's phone rang again. Sierra. Iwaizumi sighed and picked up. This is Iwaizumi on Oikoa's phone. Oh, Iwaizumi. Sierra here. Isn't Oikoa there? He's still taking a shower. Is it important? I'll tell him to call you back. Ah no, it's fine. I just wanted to ask if he's really well enough to come back soon. Iwaizumi hesitated for a moment. Yes, I guess you'll have him back in no time. Iwaizumi couldn't help but sound annoyed. Sierra belonged to the troupe that was pretty good friends with Oikoa and behaved accordingly. Actually, Iwaizumi should be happy that Oikoa had such close friends in Argentina, but it annoyed him incredibly. Sierra, on the other hand, smirked. You know, Iwaizumi, Toru really is a special person. The fuck? Toru, huh? Iwaizumi felt the heat going to his head. He was really tense. You don't have to tell me. Ah, really? Well, you know, there are people who would do anything to win Oikoa's heart. Sierra paused for a moment. Iwaizumi's heart felt like it was about to burst out of his chest. Maybe I'll steal him away from you. Another moment of silence. Iwaizumi swallowed. He was so angry and pissed off. He heard Sierra smile. Well, tell him to call me back. Take care. Then he hung up. What the hell was that just now? Iwaizumi stayed in his office for a moment and took a few deep breaths. He tried to calm down again. Why does it upset me so much? Oikoa is single and can do whatever he wants. Then he went back to the others and they all left the gym together. Iwaizumi locked the door and the four of them headed home. Atsumu yawned and toddled along behind 𝒂𝒂𝒄. Omi-kun, carry me. You have 2 legs to carry you. Please Omi-kun, I'm begging you. 𝒂𝒂𝒄 sighed and turned to look at Atsumu. He looked tired and watched at 𝒂𝒂𝒄 with pleading eyes. 𝒂𝒂𝒄 rolled his eyes and sighed again. He turned around, dropped his gym bag and squatted slightly. Come on. He signaled Atsumu to get on his back. Atsumu's eyes widened. He was as happy as a little child. Yay. I'll carry your bag, Omi. Oikoa smiled at the sight of Atsumu and 𝒂𝒂𝒄. He was so happy to see the two of them like this. Atsumu put his arms around 𝒂𝒂𝒄 and rested his chin on 𝒂𝒂𝒄's shoulder. Then he spoke tiredly. I saw that you're gonna play in the last matches of the league, Carver? Yup. Thanks to Iwa-chan I got back in shape really quickly. Mattsun had doubted that at the beginning, but it all worked out really super fast now. Nice. Atsumu's eyes grew heavier and heavier. Oikoa chuckled. How much longer are you going to stay then? My coach from San Juan and I have now agreed that I'll fly back next week on Saturday. Oh wow, that soon? Well, I have to get back to my 100% so I can beat you guys at the World Cup, right? 𝒂𝒂𝒄 smiled. You're not going to beat us. This troublemaker here is just getting better and better, and Kojima shouldn't be forgotten either. Tobio. Iwaizumi grinned. What, you still don't like your student? He's not my student. 𝒂𝒂𝒄 and 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 grinned. They walked together for a while and talked until they parted ways. "See you 𝒂𝒂𝒄. Take care of Atsumu." 𝒂𝒂𝒄 smiled and nodded while carrying Atsumu, who had fallen asleep. 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 and 𝒖𝒔𝒄 walked together in another direction. Today was a cold night. The wind whipped through the streets and it started to snow. 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 was still thinking about the call from 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 noticed that something was bothering him. "Do you think that was too much for my ankle today?" 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 was pulled out of his thoughts. He looked at 𝒖𝒂𝒄 in confusion. "You're so pensive, Iwa-chan." "Oh, no, that was a bit much strain today, but tomorrow we have a day off again." 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 remained silent for another moment, then he sighed. "𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 called you earlier." "I answered because I thought it was important. He called a few times." "Oh, what did he want?" "There are people who would do anything to win 𝒖𝒂𝒄's heart. Maybe I'll steal him away from you." "Ah, he just wanted to know if you're really coming back soon." 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 sounded dejected or rather almost annoyed. "Is it because I'm leaving again soon? I'll call him back later." "Do that, I'm sure he'll be happy." 𝒖𝒂𝒄 frowned and looked at 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅, who didn't take his eyes off the road in front of him. Is he jealous? I bet he's just talking about his girlfriend to be again anyway. 𝒖𝒂𝒄's face was turned forward, but his gaze wandered over to 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅. In the corner of his eyes, he could clearly see 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅's eyes widen and his expression relaxed. He was indeed jealous. Girlfriend? Yes, he's been dating someone for a while now. I imagine it's become something permanent by now. 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 hummed. "Iwa-chan, how do you feel about me? Are you hungry?" Yes a little. Let's cook something." "You mean I should cook something?" "You work, I'll watch. Make yourself useful, 𝒂𝒄. My presence alone is useful enough." 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 took some snow, formed a snowball, and threw it at 𝒖𝒂𝒄. "I'll show you what's useful right now." "Iwa-chan, this means war." The two goofed around and had a snowball fight on the way home. Once home, 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 prepared dinner while 𝒖𝒂𝒄 sat on the counter watching him. After the freezing weather outside and the snowball fight, 𝒖𝒂𝒄 was a little cold since he was also only wearing a t-shirt. 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 noticed the goosebumps on 𝒖𝒂𝒄's arms. "Are you cold?" "Huh?" 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 nodded to 𝒖𝒂𝒄's arms. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 rubbed his hands vigorously over them. "Oh, that's alright. You should really put on something warmer." "Yeah, bad habit. It's always so hot in Argentina, I'm somehow no longer used to the temperatures here." He "Grab a hoodie from my closet." 𝒖𝒂𝒄's eyes widened. Sure, go ahead." "Okay." 𝒖𝒂𝒄 went to 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅's bedroom and opened his closet. He loved 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅's clothes. Although he was a little bit smaller than 𝒖𝒂𝒄, his sweaters were still too big for him since 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 was so broadly built. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 picked one of 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅's black hoodies when suddenly a tiny blue box fell on the ground. He frowned and bent down to take up the box. It was dusty, so 𝒖𝒂𝒄 freed it from the dust and opened it up. The moment he saw what it's containing, his eyes widened and his heart started racing. He knelt down, being completely shocked. It was an engagement ring. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 swallowed, took the ring out of the box and looked at it closely. It was silver, plain and really beautiful. On the inside he saw a small engraving. "Forever." He turned it slightly. "Toru and Hajime." 𝒖𝒂𝒄's heart skipped a beat. His face heated up and his throat became dry. He tried to take a deep breath to calm down, but he started shaking instead. His eyes became glossy and he couldn't move his sight from that ring. He was numb. He turned off his entire surroundings and was transfixed by the ring. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 read the words over and over again. "Hey, what's taking you so long?" 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 shouted from the kitchen. He shook his head, smiled and headed into his room. "Oh, can't you decide?" 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 froze the moment he saw 𝒖𝒂𝒄 kneeling on the floor with the engagement ring in his hand. He couldn't move an inch and his words got stuck in his mouth. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 looked at him, tears streaming down his face as he held the ring in his hands. "What's this?" 𝒖𝒂𝒄 whispered. 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 tried to say anything but he couldn't. The words just didn't slip out of his mouth. His eyes were still wide open. "What's this, Iwa?" 𝒖𝒂𝒄 repeated anxiously, and 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 slowly walked to him and sat down beside him on the floor, never taking their eyes off each other. 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅's lips trembled. Engagement ring." He stuttered. 𝒖𝒂𝒄 felt like he was stabbed in the back. His eyes were full of panic. When did you want to propose?" 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 hesitated. He took a deep breath and ran his hands through his hair. He was hesitating whether to tell 𝒖𝒂𝒄 or not. Suddenly 𝒖𝒂𝒄 grabbed 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅's wrist and 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 looked into an insecure, panicking face. "When?" he repeated softly and furiously, begging him for an answer. 𝒖𝒔𝒆𝒅 still hesitated, but gave in. He nearly whispered and his voice almost cracked. The day. He sighed and looked up at the ceiling. I wanted to propose the day you broke up with me. Ikoa's eyes widened even more. He had already suspected it, but to actually hear it was like a slap in the face. He started shaking even more and his look stiffened by what he just heard. Fuck. I messed up. I messed up everything. We could have been happy by now and I messed up. Iwa-chan wanted to propose to me, to marry me. And I fucked up. I left him. I threw away everything we had. I was fucking selfish and in the end I just hurt everyone. How can I be that stupid? How could I throw away the love of my life? Why am I so disgusting? Why am I like this? Carver? Hey, look at me. Ikoa met the eyes of a hurt Iwaizumi but his vision blurred even more. He couldn't hold it back anymore. All his panic, everything he was afraid of, all his emotions, his negative thoughts. Ikoa quickly got up and ran into the bathroom and locked it immediately behind him. He slapped a hand in front of his mouth and settled down on the floor. He pulled his legs to his chest and buried his head in his knees. Ikoa sobbed. He just wanted to be alone. Fuck. Why did I fuck up that much? I'm a piece of shit. I don't deserve to be happy. Why am I like this? Iwaizumi rushed to Ikoa but the door was already locked. He heard Ikoa silently crying, sobbing, but he wasn't able to get to him. Ikoa, please open the door. I shouldn't have told you. Iwaizumi leaned his forehead and his fists against the door and all he could hear was Ikoa crying. Iwaizumi turned around and sank to the ground. He leaned back against the door, trying to say anything to comfort Ikoa but his mouth didn't let any word slip through. He knew that Ikoa blamed himself and it hurt him to see him like that. Fuck. You should never have found out.